Good evening and namaskars, or good morning if you're in India, of course. Welcome to our class number 8 of our series of the Ashtavakra Gita. So we're going to start as we always do with a chant. So here we go. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityur Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. So, welcome. And then as we always do, we'll start with a chant just to get our minds away from our daily activities, all of our worries, all of our cares, all of this world that we enjoy. I thought we would do a devotional chant to start to the Divine Mother, the aspects of the Devi. It's a chant that is from Krishna Das, so hopefully we're not going to interrupt any copyrights or anything like that. But it was Om Aim Saraswati. The song was Saraswati and originally, but we actually adapted it to include all the Devis that we have here. So we have Om Ma Kali, as you can see. We have Ma Durga, we have Ma Lakshmi, Ma Saraswati, and Sarda Devi. So we will use all of those names and invoke the one Devi in all of these beautiful forms. And I think devotion and non-dualism really goes together so well. And that's what Sri Ramakrishna he's really shown that all these things, the limbs of yoga, can be used together. So it depends on your point of view. So here we go. So this is Om Aim, and then we'll do Jai Ma Kali, Jai Ma Durga, Jai Ma Lakshmi, Jai Ma Saraswati, then Jai Ma Sharda Devi. Okay, so this is it.
Saraswati, Namaha.
Saraswati, 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 So it seems very correct to start with chanting to the Devi, to Ma, because it's the tradition, especially in Ramakrishna's life, that the Devi, the goddess, Divine Mother, in the case of Sri Ramakrishna, Kali, led Sri Ramakrishna, of course, for our own benefit, because he didn't need need this himself for his own sake, but for our sakes, he showed us. She led him from the dual to the non-dual. He went to her feet, and from taking refuge in Divine Mother, she led him to the end goal, which is the unity of all, the non-dualism that we're talking about today in Ashtavakra Gita. And I think a lot of times there seems to be a conflict. People think if you're a dualist, you can't be a non-dualist, or one is higher than the other. And they look down at people who are using dualistic ideals to express their own love or devotion. And that's not the way that Sri Ramakrishna really taught it. It's kind of an interesting situation that he went from the dual relationship with Ma Kali in the most pure, most amazing devotional way possible to the non-dual. And then again, he came back from that down to seeing all as Brahman, this Vijnana that is now really being discussed. Swami Medananda has written a book on it and so on. We talked about Ma Kali, this image of Ma Kali with Shiva down below, and Ma Kali doing the dance of creation as a perfect image of Vijnana. And for those who may not be able to be literate or so, but it's always better to have visuals too. So to see this beautiful image of Vijnana. And so this embraces the full spectrum of spiritual aspiration and expression. And so whether we're chanting to Ma Kali, to any of the Divine Mother, any divinity, forms of divinity, or melting those into the non-dualist, beautiful unification, finally turning in our own consciousness and finding that we are one, there's no two, is I think what we're all trying to achieve. So I don't see this conflict, and I thought it would be nice to have the chanting. And so going through Divine Mother to the non-dual state is something that Sri Ramakrishna really showed us how to achieve. And at the same time, we're not all, even if we're non-dualists, there's times when life really can be hard, really tough, and there's such pain and such misery in this world that can be possible. And some of it is easy to see these days, isn't it? So much strife, so much pain, so much, of course, there's previous times too, World War II, World War I, all these different wars, the horrible different massacres that have happened in times, just horribleness. And so there can be such pain. And taking this pain and this longing for healing and peace to an image of God is so soothing in our lowest times when we can't be at that highest state of our own minds, our own beings. Having that outlet, Ma, 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 just calling out to the form of divinity Sri Krishna or Rama or whatever form is dearest to the heart is Sri Krishna, say, or Sri Krishna. But just having Ma, the sleepless nights when we're staring at the ceiling and there's nothing that makes sense and there's nothing that can give us peace. Maha. So this is really the easiest path, as Sri Krishna said. And sometimes even a non-dualist, those times can really pull your mind down. So I thought it would be interesting to see, as we were talking about Ma leading us from the dual to the non-dual. I thought I'd read a little bit from Anandamoy Ma. It's a perfect explanation, kind of example of this. Anandamoy Ma, as we said last week, was kind of one of those unique beings that never had a sadhana. She was born basically a realized being. She never had an identification as we do with a separate personality and she was always the one being. And she used to call this body. So she called herself this body, says this. So she never, and when she spoke to Yoganandaji, when they met, she said, her consciousness never was, she was always the same. When she was born, she was the same. When she was growing up, she was the same. When she met him, she was the same. It's beautiful. So she really is a beautiful amalgamation of the dual and non-dual. And she talks about, it's an interesting thing because a lot of the Mas, Amaji and some of the different divine manifestations of Mother don't really talk about the non-dualist state very easily. But Anandamoy Ma does. She blends it very nicely in all of her talks when they come up. So this is a few things from Ma. Why is one not always full of bliss while engaging in japa, meditation, or other spiritual exercises? This is Ma's answer. When the object of one's supreme desire has been realized, then only there is bliss. By the sustained practice of japa, a state is reached where one feels that the mind has become one's obedient servant. Then there is the bliss of attainment, the bliss of visions and similar experiences. But one cannot keep up this condition at all times, and therefore bliss is not felt. What should one do in order to be always supremely happy? And this is Ma's answer. One has to be consistently engrossed in japa, meditation and contemplation, etc. You want to enjoy worldly happiness and at the same time experience the bliss of reality. How can you have both? The mind is roaming in all directions, and so what can be the result of a little japa done by fits and starts? By the yoga of sustained and regular practice, the mind must be made one-pointed. This is another point. That's kind of similar to what Sri Ramana Maharshi, of course, and all the Thakur, Sri Krishna, Yoganandaji, all of these paths of yoga, of devotion, getting the mind one-pointed. And in order to be able to have the mind focused on one point, we need to leave everything else aside. Be able to renounce everything else, that it doesn't take any of our attention whatsoever. This is a really hard state to be able to achieve. Of course, Sharda Devi spoke of non-dualism also. That's why it's an amazing thing that she never had, any teachings except for Thakur as her master. And she is able to discuss the details of dualistic worship and as Ma, but also she's really able to really give the most profound explanations of non-dualism too. It's an amazing thing. But this is Anandamoy Ma again. Depending on your orientation, you find him, which is your own self, as a perfect servant in relation to a master, as part in relation to the whole, or simply as one self, Atma. So again, this is similar to what Hanumanji says, depending on his state. Either you are the master, I'm your servant, you are the whole, I'm a part of you, or there is only one, depending on what state of consciousness he's in. And then Ma says, very well, the many creeds and sects serve the purpose that he may bestow himself on himself along various channels. Bestow himself on himself along various channels. So this is a completely perfect, harmonious way of dualism and non-dualism. Each has its own beauty, and that he may be discovered and expressed in countless ways, in all shapes and in all form, and in the formless. In the form of the path, he attracts each person along the particular line that will guide him in harmony with his inner dispositions and tendencies. The one is present in each sect, even though outwardly there appears to be conflict among them, which is due to the ego nature being full of doubt. In true realization, one can have no quarrel with anyone. One is fully enlightened as to all creeds, faiths, doctrines, and sects, and all paths, and sees all paths as equally good. This is the absolute and perfect realization. So beautiful. And since we have a very long chapter today that we're going to do our meditation, I won't be doing too much reading in addition to it. And this is Ananda Moima. And this is a really profound statement. Nothing has happened. To be able to understand this is very fortunate. If you can understand that nothing has happened, you have indeed been blessed with inner vision. Only you exist, you and you alone. Truly, you are contained in everything. Again, you are indeed that itself. In all infinity is he and no other. I alone am. That's Sri Ananda Moima. That's so, that's so amazingly beautiful. Ananda Moima. So I think what we're going to do now is we do have chapter 18, which is a very long chapter that we're going to use as a guided meditation. And that actually we only have one more chapter after that, maybe 20. So what we'll do is we'll get prepared for our being able to be in that one state where there is no second, just the existence of consciousness and awareness, nothing else. So as we do, we use the pranayama breathing techniques. We talked about Patanjali's Yoga Sutras where there's yama niyama, doing the things you should do, not doing the things you shouldn't. Asana, being able to be sitting or posture that allows you to take your attention completely away from the body. Then you have pranayama. Pranayama is being able to control the energy, and where there is energy, there is the consciousness. So wherever there is energy, consciousness. If our energy is flowing outward, then our consciousness is going everywhere outward. If we can turn that energy inward, pranayama, yama, control, prana, the energy, life force. If we can turn that energy inward, then we can start to interiorize our awareness and our consciousness. And we can get closer to that one-pointedness that is so vital, but also so amazingly possible for most of us, right? So we'll use pranayama, which is breathing controls the prana. So pranayama is not just a breathing exercise. It's breathing that helps you mentally control the prana and redirect it inward. So pranayama. And then if we do this correctly, we get to the next stage called pratyahara, which is when that energy is turned within and it's no longer being projected outward to the senses. So it's a feeling that you get in meditation where your body feels like it's sort of gone to sleep. It's numb. You don't have your sense of hearing. You don't have your sense of seeing or feeling there anymore. And the mind itself will start to be affected. So this pratyahara is where there's a true interiorization. And you might only be aware of maybe the point between the eyebrows, or you might be not aware of the body at all, but just focalize there on that energy. You might see, there's different things that happen. Some people go through their third eye and so on. So pratyahara, then dhyana, dhyana, samadhi. Dhyana is that single pointedness. Dhyana, dhyana, single pointedness, dhyana, focused on meditation on that one point. So those are the profound states. Samadhi, of course, is absorption. So we're not going to, most of us aren't going to get to the end stages here, especially today. But if we could get to pratyahara, it's a real game changer. You can get to that point where the body numbs out and you really can not be distracted so much by it. So if we can get to that stage, and if we can get to that pratyahara where we're just in that awareness, and the body's not really bothering us, and we're just really just receptive. And then when the words of the Ashtavakra Gita are read, again, just let them come as from the center of your own being. Let these words, these profound images, messages, these words, come in from your own consciousness, that it's a revelation from yourself to yourself, as Ma was saying. So that there's not a reader, there's not a separateness, it's all you. And these words are just coming up and you're experiencing them. And that's the way to do this most, I think the most effectively, because you really imprint this image and this message of the Ashtavakra Gita then into the conscious mind. It starts to become aware of these and accept this. So I think this is real helpful. So we'll do this. Remember, we'll do the pranayama, which is, we do a simple pranayama. We don't do anything more complicated. So we're just breathing in twice through the nose. And we're going to hold, try to keep that inhalation as long as you can. If you can do it for a count of 10, that's wonderful. If you can't do it for that long, just until you stop. Then hold it for an equal amount of time. And then exhale through the mouth with a double exhalation. And this gets the breath all the way in, holding it all the way out. At the same time, when you breathe in, tense your body completely. And then hold that tension while you hold the breath. And then when you exhale, you let all that tension from your body, every cell, every atom, and from your mind, and from your emotions, and from your whole being. All tension will be released. So we'll do this 3 times together. And then what we'll do is practice Soham meditation shortly. Remember, Soham is so beautiful and something you can do at any time. When that last time when you exhale, double exhalation, let the breath just, that 3rd time, let the breath stay out. And don't control it in any way, just observe it. And when on its own the breath starts to come in, you mentally chant So. And if it's a short or a long breath, you can So or So. And then you just wait, let the breath stay. Don't try to force it coming in or out. And when it's ready to go of its own, and you exhale, hum. So, hum. So on the inhale, hum on the exhale. Nothing in between. And if you find that you don't need to breathe, let yourself enjoy that. That's kind of what we want to achieve if we can. So just let that, if there's a breathless state there, don't try to force yourself to breathe. That's kind of counter to what we're trying to achieve here. Let it just exist in that peace. And then when you finally do, exhale, hum. So hum, I am he. So with every breath, we're affirming the truth of our own being. So let's do the pranayama. Then remember on that 3rd exhale, just don't control the breath, just let it be. And then when it feels like it's time to, you're breathing in, so hum. Okay, so we'll do this and then we'll just sit in silence for just a little while. And then I'll start reading the Ashtavakra Gita. And so we'll just have this this period of reading. And again, just feel like this is coming from your own self. The words aren't from any embodied direction, not from me. It's coming from sight of your own awareness, your own consciousness. Okay? So we'll get ready here now. And then we'll start with our pranayama. And so here we go. Now we're going to be able to start. Remember, inhale, tense with the inhalation. Inhale is to a count of 10 if you can. Hold for that same count of 10 and exhale for a count of 10. So these 3 times, and then just don't control the breath. Okay, so here we go. Hold, exhale. Let go of all the tension. Now inhale. Hold. Exhale. Let all the tension go. Now inhale. Hold. Exhale all the tension. Now let this last breath just be. When the breath wants it, its own, come in, so, and hum when it goes out. Love your true self, which is naturally happy and peaceful and bright. Awaken to your own nature, and all delusions melt like a dream. How much pleasure you take in acquiring worldly goods, but to find happiness, you must give them all up. The sorrows of duty, like the heat of the sun, have scorched your heart. But let stillness fall on you with its sweet and cooling showers, and you will find happiness. For the world is nothing. It is only an idea. But the essence of what is and of what is not can never fail. The self is always the same, already fulfilled, without flaw or choice or striving, close at hand, but boundless. When the self is known, all illusions vanish. The veil falls, and you see clearly. Your sorrows are dispelled, for the self is free and lives forever. Everything else is imagination, nothing more. Because he understands this, the master acts like a child. When you know you are God, and that what is and what is not are both imaginary, and you are at last free of desire, then what is there left to know or to say or to do? For the self is everything. When the seeker knows this, he falls silent. He no longer thinks, I am this, I am not that. Such thoughts melt away. He is still, without pleasure or pain, distraction or concentration, learning or ignorance. His nature is free of conditions. Win or lose, it makes no difference to him. Alone in the forest or out in the world, a god in heaven or a simple beggar, it makes no difference. He is free of duality. Wealth or pleasure, duty or discrimination mean nothing to him. What does he care? What is accomplished or neglected? Finding freedom in this life, the seeker takes nothing to heart, neither duty nor desire. He has nothing to do but to live out his life. The master lives beyond the boundaries of desire, delusion, or the world. Meditation on the truth, liberation itself, what are they to him? You see the world and you try to dissolve it, but the master has no need to. He is without desire. For though he sees nothing. When you have seen God, you meditate on him, saying to yourself, I am he. But when you are without thought, and you understand there is only one, without a second, on whom do you meditate? When you are distracted, you practice concentration. But the master is undistracted. He has nothing to fulfill. What is there left for him to accomplish? He acts like an ordinary man, but inside he is quite different. He sees no imperfection in himself, nor distraction, nor any need for meditation. He is awake, fulfilled, free from desire. He neither is nor is not. He looks busy, but he does nothing. Striving or still, he is never troubled. He does whatever comes his way, and he is happy. He has no desires. He has cast off his chains. He walks on air. He is free, tumbling like a leaf in the wind, from life to life. He has gone beyond the world, beyond joy and sorrow. His mind is always cool. He lives as if he had no body. His mind is cool and pure. He delights in the self. There is nothing he wishes to renounce. He misses nothing. His mind is naturally empty. He does as he pleases. He is not an ordinary man. Honor and dishonor mean nothing to him. The body does this, not I. My nature is purity. With these thoughts, whatever he does nothing. But he pretends not to know. He finds freedom in this life, but he acts like an ordinary man. Yet he is not a fool. Happy and bright, he thrives in the world. Weary of the vagaries of the mind, he is at last composed. He does not know or think or hear or see. Undistracted, he does not meditate. Unbound, he does not seek freedom. He sees the world, but knows it is an illusion. He lives like God. Even when he is still, the selfish man is busy. Even when he is busy, the selfless man is still. He is free. His mind is unmoved by trouble or pleasure, free from action, desire, or doubt. He is still and he shines. His mind does not strive to meditate or to act. It acts or meditates without purpose. When a fool hears the truth, he is muddled. When a wise man hears it, he goes within. He may look like a fool, but he is not muddled. The fool practices concentration and control of the mind, but the master is like a man asleep. He rests in himself and finds nothing more to do. Striving or still, the fool never finds peace, but the master finds it, just by knowing how things are. In this world, men try all kinds of paths, but they overlook the self, the beloved. Awake and pure, flawless and full, beyond the world, the fool will never find freedom by practicing concentration. But the master never fails. Just by knowing how things are, he is free and content. Because the fool wants to become God, he never finds him. The master is already God, without ever wishing to be. The fool has no foundation, fretting to be free. He only keeps the world spinning. But the master cuts it at the root of all suffering. Because the fool looks for peace, he never finds it. But the master is always at peace. because he understands how things are. If a man looks to the world, how can he see himself? The master is never distracted by this or that. He sees himself, the self that never changes. The fool tries to control his mind. How can he ever succeed? Mastery always comes naturally to the man who is wise and who loves himself. One man believes in existence, another says there is nothing. Rare is the man who believes in neither. He is free from confusion. The fool may know that the self is pure and indivisible, but because of his folly, he never finds it. He suffers all his life. The mind of a man who longs to be free stumbles without support. But the mind of a man who is already free stands on its own. It is empty of passion. The senses are tigers. When a timid man catches sight of them, he runs for safety to the nearest cave to practice control and meditation. But a man without desires is a lion. When the senses see him, it is they who take flight. They run away like elephants, as quickly as they can. And if they cannot escape, they serve him like slaves. A man who has no doubts and whose mind is one with the self no longer looks for ways to find freedom. He lives happily in the world, seeing and hearing, touching and smelling and tasting. Just by hearing the truth, he becomes spacious and his awareness pure. He is indifferent to striving or stillness. He is indifferent to his own indifference. The master is like a child. He does freely whatever comes his way, good or bad. By standing on his own, a man finds happiness. By standing on his own, a man finds freedom. By standing on his own, he goes beyond the world. By standing on his own, he finds the end of the way. When the man realizes he is neither the doer nor the enjoyer, the ripples of his mind are still. The master's way is unfettered, and free of guile he shines. But for the fool there is no peace. His thoughts are full of desire. The master is free of his mind, and his mind is free. In this freedom he plays. He has a wonderful time, or he withdraws and lives in a mountain cave. If the master encounters a king or a woman or someone he dearly loves, he is without desire. And when he honors a god or a holy place, or a man versed in the scriptures, there is no longing in his heart, none at all. He is unperturbed, even when his servants despise him, or his wives, sons, or grandsons mock him. Even when the whole family makes fun of him, he is undismayed. For him there is no pain in pain, no pleasure in pleasure. Only those who are like him can know his exaltation. He has no form. His form is emptiness. He is content and pure. He has no sense of duty, which only binds men to the world. not sure there's much more to say after that. As you know, the Ashtavakra Gita, Sri Ramakrishna hid it in his room, and he only let Swami Vivekananda read it. He didn't let anybody else read it, not even Swami Brahmananda. So the fact that we have it available to us is really precious and amazing to be able to really absorb it and to use this life to be able to pierce into the reality. It's amazing. Is there anything you guys would like to mention or ask or any experiences?
I was kind of getting confused with the master, that he knows the mind and thing, and the food doesn't. So that I was trying to experience that, and that's what I'm getting confused.
The difference between the master and the fool. Yeah, that's a good question, actually. It seems like the fool is kind of trying to do everything we're taught, right? To concentrate, to meditate, to all of those things. And when the mind is going in different directions, the fool tries to use concentration and all these things. I think it's kind of interesting because if you read Ramana Maharshi, it matches very nicely with what this is saying. What they're saying is that they're not trying to, at least what Ramana Maharshi says, is he's not trying to say you should never use concentration or meditation. But the point is to get to that single point of awareness and then just to surrender, turn within to that awareness. Instead of trying to achieve something, because you can only take the ego so far, right? You can't go beyond it. It's that utter surrender without any desires, without any force moving you, without anything pulling you, without anything. There's no motive in there at all. It's complete stillness. It's the ultimate renunciation. It's not even renunciation, it's just ultimate surrender. And I think it takes that person who has gone through enough in their life for them to realize that there isn't any more that is going to give them happiness or peace or anything that they really, really want. It's all not going to lead anywhere. So they just surrender it all. And there's no striving, there's not any, the master has a natural state of awareness. And that's why Ramana, when people sat there and meditated in his presence and so on, they kind of were discouraged. They especially, you can read Anamali Swamiji's writings on how he was taught. We had a retreat that said eyes open and eyes shut. And the idea of having, it talks about this idea of having eyes open. The master doesn't try to dispel the world. He doesn't try to dissolve the self or to dissolve the world. He sees it as all one. There's nothing to do with the world, nothing to move him to try to have anything with the world whatsoever. Just let it exist. So he's in that full state of consciousness. There's no second. When you're doing any motive, there's two. Whenever you're trying to meditate, whenever you're trying to do this, it takes somebody to do that. And so it separates you. And this, I think, it's a little confusing because it's kind of coming at the end of all of the sadhana that we do, right? It takes somebody who's gone through a tremendous amount of sadhana, I think, to get to this state. But at that final point, you realize that the sadhana, the meditation, all these things you're doing are useless to actually get you there. You really just need to surrender utterly, absolutely, and totally, and just exist. And know that there's nothing to attain. There's nothing to achieve. There's nothing, it is just let the self shine forth. It's already there. We never stop being that. They keep on saying this over and over again, that you never were not that. There's nothing that you need to create or achieve, or just let the desires be done. And I think, they talked also about ripe, like Ramana said, they have ripe aspirants and aspirants that weren't ripe. I think ripe ones are just been through it all already. They're ready for this final, okay, I'm done. There's nothing more for me in any world to try to achieve. It's all, there's not any motive there, nothing to move them. They're totally still. And I don't think you can make yourself that way. I don't think you can try to achieve it or do pujas for it, or, that's again, motive. So,
Then the frustration is, I think, that
So-
I'm getting.
but it just takes that surrender, that you're beyond striving. And so it just points out that distinction. And it's a subtle thing, I think, at the end of lifetimes of sadhana, that you've done to be able to get to that point. But I think you do need to use, and Ramana said this too, we can use those techniques to be able to still the mind and make it one-pointed. Because just to sit there and let your mind wander is not going to achieve anything either.
Right, and that's why like Sarvapriyananda or Ishatmananda, they all said when you do meditate, try to think of Thakur in your heart, or start with the lotus and then the heart, the Swamiji or the Thakur and all, and stay focused with that only, so that thoughts don't come. So, and now after listening to that, I said, boy, I'm completely free. It's not going anywhere and will never go anywhere. So I said, okay, I made my mind. I will stay with my thing, with the one I started working on it.
There's actually there's no conflict there. Even Ramana said you have to get to point of single-pointedness, the mind to single-pointedness. Whatever path and technique you use, focus just on that.
Right.
Until the mind is singular. And then with that singular mind, it turns within. There's a time when that, instead of putting it on something anywhere, outside, anything external, it turns within. That's so. I don't think
build
there's
the foundation with the sadhanas.
exactly. And I think that's what's the danger a little bit too of sometimes. That's why Swamiji was the only one who was allowed to read this, perhaps, right? And this chapter, by the way, is the most difficult one. This is, and it was stated by other teachers that this is the chapter that really is the one that comes to the crux. This non-dualism can be a wonderful thing because it was always kept hidden from the masses in India, because it was only there. There was no non-dualism taught in the West. There was no non-dualism that came up anywhere else. It was a product of India only. And so it was only given to utter renunciants, total, and not even every sadhu, but those who really were right to be able to absorb this types of teaching, because it can be very confusing, especially if it's given to those who are probably not ready for it, because it can be disorienting and very disturbing in some ways, because it does throw your whole world into a tailspin of everything you thought. But I think that, that's why Sarvapriyanandaji doing a lot of his talks and setting the groundwork for people to be able to understand a little hint of this non-dualism is paving the way a little bit. Swamiji, of course, Swami Vivekananda, when he came to the West, he freely taught non-dualism. He was teaching a lot of the Upanishads and the scriptures for the first time. It's throwing them to whoever was around. So I think this can be a one. That's why I started it. If you understand why I did that, it was kind of method to the madness. We chanted to the Holy Mother. We chanted to the Devi, because that's always been and then Thakur really is such an amazing being to be able to do this. He combined both. He combined the surrendering to the Devi and that total love for the Devi, to the Divine Mother, because Kali is everything. She creates everything, us, all worlds, all vibration, everything. She's the creatrix of all of it. And then all the other Devis function within it, right? So you can hang your head on that. You can focus on that one point. So
yeah, that
one
I
thing.
understand, and that I get it here.
Mhm.
But today I was completely out.
Mhm. But just think about it this way. What makes it simpler is this. At some point, when you get that single pointedness, you can focus on any Shri Krishna or one of the Devis, whatever one you love most. That's your Ishta. You can focus on that completely. And you become one with that Ishta. It's still kind of out there. At some point, and Swamiji talks about this, he's talked about going to all throughout India, bowing down to everything until his forehead bled. He said, until you turn within into that, your own source of the I, your own source of awareness, consciousness, that's the final step. At some point, you don't try to project anything, try to accomplish anything, you turn within. And that's where the non-dualism actually takes place. And also, by the way, it's not on your own ego. There's this total surrender when you turn it within. That's why, again, it's impossible to use your ego to do any of this stuff because it's a separate self. So that's the illusion, and the danger is that you can accomplish this with your own willpower, with your own study, or all these things. Ramana even said, when you turn within, there's a higher power that pulls you in to that, where you go beyond this. I've heard other people say you back into, you can't go forward. There's teachings in Tamil Nadu that you're focusing on the back. So instead of this focus outward, this striving, you're surrendering. You're focusing on the back and you're falling into God. And this is kind of preparation for what they're talking about, is that you are pulled into that. Your surrender is so total that there isn't anything else. There's just that one. So it's not an intellectual thing. And it's true. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's one of my concerns about really doing Ashtavakra Gita, which is a very profound scripture. It's not one of those where you can play around with it mentally. It hits you right between the eyes. And it might be disconcerting. And I think the disconcertingness is actually okay too, because what makes you so solid is the ego saying, okay, this is secure, this is solid, I have done this, I can do this breathing, I can do this mantra, I can do all this stuff. And that serves you for a while. But after a point, we have to go beyond even that. And so at that time, then something like this comes and knocks you for a loop, I think. Again, I'm not a master teacher, and I'm not trying to pretend anything here. I'm just trying to, from my own study, of these things, what I've observed in my own self and my striving and so on. So I totally understand what you're saying. I really love the idea of sooner or later, you have to go beyond all striving. And this is just showing you in a real stark terms the difference. And I think calling it a fool and a master might be a little bit hard, because those terms are a translation, number one. And number two, it's showing you the differences between one stage and another. And, the final kind of what this is trying to accomplish. And again, I think it just takes millions and millions of lifetimes of existence to be able to get to the point here.
Right. That's the thing. We are way out here.
Not necessarily. That's only in the mind. That's only a judgment and that's one thing that's cool about this, is that's our own judgment. You wouldn't be hearing this. This wouldn't even be coming into your consciousness by accident. You can't. So there's some reason that these things, like you wouldn't listen to Sarvapriyanandaji by accident, and you just don't turn them in. It's like, get blown away by his teachings. So, or read these things. At some point, you're even just planting a seed, or whatever. But what Ramana keeps on saying, and I love the way he does this, he just points you to the fact that you always have been that. You've never stopped being that. There's nothing for you to achieve. You are that. Full stop. That's it. There's nothing more. And he always turns people back into that. Always. If you read his discussions with people, he'll let them go on and prattle on and ask questions about philosophy and the worlds and reincarnation. But he always does that. Who is the one who's asking these questions? What is the source of that individual? Where is that source? Follow that back to its root. That's the answer. That's the answer. He always does that. And he always says, there's nothing to gain. You've always been that. You've never stopped. This is just something, it's an impression. And it's totally not, it's not true. It's something it was funny. One of my friends, Prashanti Jayagar, he was a student of Papaji, who was a direct disciple of Ramana Maharshi. And he said to his teacher, I will do anything to become enlightened. I will live in a cave. I will do all of these things, all these things I will to become enlightened in this lifetime. Tell me what to do. I just want to be done. And he laughed, and he laughed. And he said, it takes tremendous effort to stay bound. He said it takes zero effort to be free. He said, you've got it all backwards. Tremendous effort to stay bound. All the efforts in our desires and our goals and our lack of being good enough or lack of being high enough and holy enough and all those things are projections. All those things are not true. Because there's only one awareness. There's only one total awareness, consciousness. It's chopped up in illusion. It's all false. There's not two of us. There's not all of us separate. That's totally false. They keep on saying this. There's only one of us. And that's the grand illusion. This is not true. So eventually we get there. And in the meantime, I think that's why it's so great to have devotion to Holy Mother. When we get a little overheated, you just say Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. And you can sing and chant. So, but thanks for the questions. I think those are really good questions. And it brings us to a lot of people's, consternation.
Exactly that. Okay.
Generally, I don't have.
But it's good. I mean, together we
But
can
I'm
figure it out.
always looking for whatever information I get. Okay, it goes in there. Never had a chance to question because I'm not that, I don't know, maybe that sure about that can challenge something. You challenge and you can question when you are challenging somebody. But when I'm getting all information, I am completely out here, down. So no way to answer. So that's what, because I got so confused. I didn't know what to think, because then I said, okay, if I can do this, maybe I'm better off with the bhakti. Only bhakti will take me to
Well, and so that would be true if this was never presented to you. I think the fact that, as I said, there's no accidents, number one. And Thakur said bhakti is the simplest path, for sure.
Yeah, that
However,
it works just.
those who are that's why Thakur is kind of an amalgamation of everything. Those who just have bhakti on one form can be very, very one-sided. And they also conflict with a lot of things in the world and other people and so on. So what Sri Ramakrishna said very clearly is take your non-dualism, tie it in the corner of your cloth, and then do as you like. This is really important because knowing that there's only one, all of us are really just illusory separateness. There's one awareness, period, end of statement.
Yeah.
That makes us so close. I mean, there's no matter of doing something for somebody else. It's the same being. It's the same. They call it God, or if you want to call it God. But, karma yoga, of course, it's one. So it's one. Other religions, of course, it's all one. It doesn't matter. All these little things are incidental details, and it brings human beings closer together. If there's one way that we can really save this world, it's people knowing that they're so closely connected. It's not even conceivable for us. We're the same.
That's the main
being.
thing.
Yeah. So I think that's why Thakur said this. Take this non-dualism, tie it in your corner of your cloth. Doesn't mean you have to focus on it. It means that you have to understand what it's adding to that bhakti, because it makes you universal in that sense, like Thakur was. I mean, he was able to have that bhakti for any form of divinity. He just focused on Christ, or he focused on or Buddha, or Ma, Kali. And he was able to be totally absorbed completely separately, but he also went back into that non-dual state always and saw everything merging into that. That's what allowed him to be so universal. And so we wouldn't have Chaturmatotopat without that non-dualism. It wouldn't be possible. It would be a silly thing to say without non-dualism. So I think it's important. It doesn't mean you have to judge yourself either. And just be easy on yourself. Sometimes we tend to be really harsh on ourselves. And if you get that feeling like, oh, I'm just gonna do it, just think about, don't be so hard on yourself. Just relax. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to, like they're saying, you're not trying to accomplish anything or achieve anything.
Right.
You're just trying to surrender and be at peace and be happy. That's why it keeps on saying being happy. So I think that we're all hard on ourselves. We have to kind of find out how to loosen the screws to ourselves a lot. So the spiritual path can be really wonderful if you can learn how to not be so hard on yourself. 'Cause-
Vedanta can be very difficult actually, this non-dualism. I told Swami Sarvapriyanandaji once that in this life, let me do karma yoga and bhakti yoga. In my next life, I'll go to that.
But it's actually quite simple. What I found, it's probably the easiest thing, but it's just so obvious that we don't want to admit it and face it, this non-dualism, because we're, there's to study all of the scriptures and to do all of these things and to try to get everything right and all these, it's a lot. But if you're talking about just surrender and that you just have that one awareness and you finally eventually turn inside and you see that it's the simplest thing in the world. And that's what Ramana kept on saying over and over again, is that, his teachings were very simple, but for those who weren't able to comprehend them, he used words to be able to kind of help them along. And the Thakur did too, I think, if you noticed, he talked in duality and the non-duality in the same paragraph sometimes, and got them right to, you're reading all this thing about beautiful bhakti, and all of a sudden he throws in non-dualism at you, it's kind of an interesting thing. Anyway, so I think that's why it's good. By the way, when we finish the Ashtavakra Gita, I think the next thing we're going to do is going to work on a little bhakti, and so dualism, but in a really profound way, diving into the devis or to the ishtas of the forms. Because as Thakur said, once you reach the roof, you can back down and see that the whole steps were all the same substance. So from this crazy high state of non-dualism and infinite blessedness, we can see then everything as a part of that blessedness. There's not any differentiation. So we can really enjoy the dualistic worship that we can do and have some fun with it. So, all right, thank you all so much. And thank you for your questions. That was really good. It's always better when you guys say something because it's important, to bring the discussion around too. So thank you. And thank you all who are watching us from Videoland on YouTube. And this will be, this is going to be recorded on the Las Vegas Vedanta Center's YouTube channel. And by the way, next month we have Satyamaya Nandaji is coming in. It's from, it's for us here, and that will be on, let me tell you the dates so that you know, the 21st and 22nd in Las Vegas. He'll be giving talks here. Of September. Yeah, so we're really excited. Okay. Om Namo Shivaya to all.